Good evening. Welcome to Live at 525 with the Burlington School Commissioners. My name is Stephen Carey. I'm Commissioner for Ward 2. My friend and colleague here next to me is Keith Pillsbury. He's School Commissioner for Ward 8. And the purpose of this program, of course, is to let you know about some of the many goings-on in the Burlington School District. But to give you some perspective, we have 10 schools. We have approximately 3,500 students. We have approximately 1,500 employees. That includes everyone from kitchen, cafeteria workers, custodians, bus drivers, teachers. We have 7 different unions. And we have an $88 million budget. So you can imagine that the complexity of running a district as large as this, as complex as this, is very complex. So we would like to let you know about 2 major items that are going on right now. One is the superintendent search, and one is the budget process, which we're right in the middle of right now. But before we do that, I just want to welcome everyone back from the holidays. I hope everyone had a peaceful and happy holiday. And you know, the second half of the school year has begun. And if you walk by some of the schools, you see the excitement that's happening. You can hear the kids on the playground. Everything is back, running strong. And as my mother used to say, as the days get longer, the cold gets stronger. So we're in that part of the year that some of us like. We haven't seen any real cold yet, of course, but it's definitely coming. Teachers were back last week working on professional development around the district. And I just want to let you know a little bit about what they were doing. At Edmonds Middle School, there was an equity workshop, planning for equity conversations in the classroom. At Flynn, there were restorative circles and mindfulness activities going on. At Edmonds Elementary School, it was a day of interconnectedness. This is kind of interesting. Teachers started out by taking the 3rd grade SBAC interim math test as a perspective on how their students, you know, are dealing with those issues that they're expected to understand by the end of the year. At CP Smith, there was information about the Teachers College approach to classroom libraries to support literacy. At Hunt, there were restorative practices, crafting a Hunt philosophy focused on teaching and learning. And at Champlain Elementary School, full staff climate activity work on restorative practices, which was a follow-up from an August workshop, and a review of PBIS expectations as a school community. PBIS is a behavior observation and modification technique that's employed successfully in many schools. I just want to give a shout out to Stephanie Phillips, who is our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning in the district, who arranges for all of these things to go on in all of our different schools during professional development times that occur frequently throughout the year. So thank you, Stephanie, for doing that. Appreciate it. But anyway, again, the purpose of tonight's program is to update you on the superintendent search. Keith is going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk about the complex budget process that we've started in October, and we're right in the middle of it right now. I want you to remember that this is a call-in show, and that I think the number that you can call is on the screen. If it isn't, it's 862-3966. We will try to answer any questions that you have. We are 2 of 12 board members, so we'll do as best we can if you have any questions. Thank you for that. And Keith, you want to talk about superintendent search?
Steve, I just want to say we recognize Shelley Mathias, the principal of Edmonds Elementary School, at our last board meeting. Since you mentioned PBIS, yes, as Edmonds has been recognized as an outstanding implementation school for that program, which affects the climate and the way students interact with one another, and sort of basically brings a climate of positivity within the school, and she has been recognized as a leader in that school, for a school that has really been able to manage a climate and an environment in which students are safe, and they have less issues of sort of tension or conflict within the school. So that she's been recognized by the Agency of Education, and we as a board recognized Edmonds Elementary School and its leader, Shelley Mathias, as principal at our last board meeting in December. But going to another issue, what I consider probably a major responsibility of the Burlington School Board is the selection of a new superintendent, a leader for the educational system in our district and within our community. So the leader for the education that we provide for all of our students within the city. We have selected a firm that's going to sort of help us work in searching for candidates. That firm is McPherson and Jacobson, and they're going to help us in recruiting of candidates that I think fit the values of our community, and they are going to be holding input sessions from the community, one starting tomorrow night, January 8th. That's Wednesday, January 8th, at 6:30 p.m. at Hunt Middle School. And it's important that if community members, parents, feel that they have something to say about the qualities of the leadership, the values that they have, what values they have for our educational system, that please come out. Please come out, and your comments will be put on real time on a laptop, and they will be available for candidates who might be interested to see the comments that are made by the people attending these sessions. The questions that they would like to have the people attending these meetings respond to are, what makes your community a good place to live? That should be a very good question. I think that those responses are going to be very informative, not only for the superintendent, but for, I think, school board members. What makes this a good school district for students and staff? That'll also be very, I think, give us some insight. What are the issues that a new superintendent needs to know about as they come into the district? And the fourth question is, what skills, qualities, and characteristics will the new superintendent need in order to be successful? These are the four questions that they will be asking community members and parents, and whatever your category is, I'm just going to say in general, community members, to respond to. Now, if you're unable to make tomorrow night, there are two other sessions. One is on January 23rd at Integrated Arts Academy, and at that location, we'll be able to provide interpretation help and childcare. So that will be January 23 at 6:30 at Integrated Arts Academy. Especially if you are in need of some childcare and would also like to have interpreters available for you. And on January 29th, we will have there will be a third session at 6:30 p.m. at Champlain Elementary School. And again, childcare and interpretation will be, providers will be available. Now, we know that it's hard to get out in the evening for many people, but you certainly have a voice, and you'd like to share that ideas you have. We'd like to have you email your comments to superintendent search, all one word, at bsdvt.org. And this is an address set up so that people can make comments, they can give the board information, so that we can carry out a successful search for the new Burlington superintendent. Teachers and other leaders will be given other opportunities, and staff, like teachers and staff, will be provided other opportunities to give their input. So, although they're not, teachers and staff are are welcome to attend these 3 sessions, or any one of these 3 sessions. There will be separate sessions set up, hopefully scheduled in a timely fashion for our teachers and staff, administrators, etc., within our district, so that they can also present their ideas regarding the answers to these 3 questions. So we're trying to carry out a very open, very transparent process, and the board will be looking at all of this information, and this is the kind of information that will be used by the search firm to sort of filter the candidates that will be recommended to us to look at in the superintendent search.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
Okay.
I just want to thank Commissioners Gulick and Sowers for putting this together. They did the research about the search team that we've hired to do this work, and they've set up the workshops that Keith mentioned and the website that Keith mentioned for community input. It is an exciting time to think that there will be a new district leader, coming to the district soon. I've been a Burlington resident for 40 years, and I love it here, and I think it's a real opportunity for people who are interested in becoming part of our community, our school community, our leadership team here in the city to take a leap forward and move to Vermont and have a great stay here. So with that, thanks again, Keith, for that. So I would like to talk a little bit about the budget process that we've been through, because it's a huge budget. As I mentioned, it's an $88 million budget that we're talking about for these 10 different schools and all these employees and teachers and everything. So I want to just go through a timeline of where we've been since October, and I'll lead you up to tonight, because right after this television show, Keith and I are off to the board meeting where the budget, again, is the major point of discussion. So, the budget discussion with the boards is happening all around the state right now, because there's an end of January timeline for us to finish our work, and that's statewide. And of course, it's happening in Burlington as well. It began in October. It ends at the end of January. It is very complicated, as I mentioned before. And I'll just give you an idea if you bear with me. On October 15th, so several months ago, Financial Director Lavery began the discussion of the budget procedure with us board members by talking about the landscape of expenditures. And what he meant by that was wages and benefits are a major portion of the budget expenditures, special ed legislation and complying with that is another, inflation increases, capital and new investments. He talked about those as a way to define the landscape of expenditures. He also briefed us on revenue sources, which are local, federal, and state. And at the end of that meeting, Director Lavery asked for guidance from the board in allocations and priorities. So I just want to remind people listening that we did set board priorities back in July when we had our summer retreat, and I'm going to read them to you right now. It's relatively straightforward. There were 3 of them. Number 1 is to support all building and program administrators with the resources they need to lead high-performing schools and programs. Number 2 is to work to close the achievement gap by improving outcomes for all students. And number 3 is to provide programs that deliver challenge and choice. That, again, our 3 board goals are available to you on the website. You can find that, but with not too much effort. At our November, so that was the October meeting. Our November 12th meeting was a focus on English language learners. And for your information, 16% of Burlington students are English language learners. That's 566 students, so that's a very big population. Now that's according to October 2019 data. That could be there could be more or less right now as we speak halfway through the year. But at that meeting, Director Caitling defined the English language learner budget in terms of sources, principles of allocation, levels of need, and differentiation among our schools. So you can imagine people moving to Burlington from different parts of the world who have some knowledge of English, and there are people moving here who have absolutely no knowledge of English. So the responsibility is huge for English language learners in our district to get them, to be as functional as possible and to meet the needs that they have so that they can be successful in their true intelligence and power can be realized as they go through the system.
I just want to
Yes.
add, Stephen, that
Yes.
it's not that they enter our schools at the beginning of the school year and end of August and then start. Oftentimes, we are receiving new students who are unable to speak English very proficiently throughout the year. And so we have to be able to be flexible enough to be able to move those students into courses, classes, area with staff that starts working with them as soon as they arrive in our city, arrive in our schools, so they can arrive anytime during the school year. So that's why when you said the number could be increased, it does increase regularly as new students arrive throughout the year. And if you are not familiar with the English language, it's quite an adjustment that you have to make. But our staff is very flexible and knowledgeable, and they work to make sure that they're all feeling that they're making some progress so that they can feel much more a part of us and feel much more. I think we're very welcoming, but it's very difficult if you are unfamiliar with the culture, unfamiliar with the routine of school, or unfamiliar with the language, and especially if you want, as most of these people do, most of these new Americans students do, they really want to succeed in public education because this is something new to them.
Great. Okay, so that was our November 12th meeting. It was a focus on English language learners. On November 19th, the focus was on special education and then the needs that the principals defined from around the district. So for your information, Director Nugent, who's the Director of Special Education in the district, explained the special education expenditures and funding sources, much like Director Caitling had done the previous meeting. So this again was our second meeting in November. And for your information, 19% or 675 students require special ed support. So again, that's a huge number and that's a big expense that we try to accommodate. Following that presentation on November 19th, the principals and staff gave us lists which were very helpful because they were prioritized lists that had been a result of previous discussions among principals and staff for preschool, elementary school, middle school, and high school needs.
All 10 schools.
All 10 schools. So it was a giant list. It was a giant list of categories that they had, again, prioritized. We found after reviewing that many of the items, many of the requests for this coming budget year had to do with behavioral issues in the early grades, as well as rounding out the system's responsibility to meet special needs. So that was the focus of a lot of, not the focus, but that was a major portion of the asks. We refer to them as asks from the principals who presented it that night. And then on the December 10th meeting.
I think we should say that the amount of line items that they had sort of arrived at, these was their priorities. It was not all that they wanted, but that was their priorities. They had sort of made a lot of compromises and sifted through, came to about $4.6 million in new investments or new programs. That is less than last year. It was over $5 million, but still a substantial amount of money that they were saying that we had needs for in our district.
Yeah. So again, that information was presented to us on the 10th, December 10th, the line item analysis, and that's available to you also if you want to look at it. It's on board docs under meetings, December 10th. It's Article 7.0, and it's titled FY21 Budget Recommendations. It's interesting to look at that because it gives you an idea of where the needs are in the district. But again, as Keith just mentioned, it was a $4.6 million increase in new funding.
For new programs, not
New programs.
new investments, totally new items, not an increase in the budget that we had last year based upon whatever increase in costs and with the current programs. These were totally new programs.
Yes. And so that discussion on those items continued in the December 17th meeting, but it was arranged a little differently. We went to the Burlington Electric Company, and we had what was called a carousel of information with staff and district leaders who were in attendance. So basically, it was the room was set up so that board members and some community members who were interested could go around and listen to the questions that board members asked of the staff and the leadership who were there on specific items. And those different stations were, I'll let you know what they were. There was curriculum data. Number 2, safe and inclusive schools, climate and culture. Number 3, human resources, property services, and information technology. And then 4 was board budget ideas. So again, that information is available to you on board docs under the December 17th superintendent's report. It's Article 5.A. It's interesting to look at that, how that was presented and what were the specific items in each category that were discussed. So at the end of that December 17th meeting, the board asked district, because the 4.6 million is really, really high, even though in an ideal world we would honor every single one of those requests, but the reality is that can't happen. So the board asked district leadership at our last meeting on December 17th to prepare 3 different scenarios. One with a $500,000 increase. So the number of asks was 4.6 million. One scenario that we asked the leadership to come up with was a scenario that was $500,000. The second was capped at 1.25 million. And the third at 2.0 million. So tonight's board meeting is about those 3 scenarios presented to us by email for discussion tonight on the fiscal year 21 budget. Now, in the meantime, some board members got together over the weekend and we proposed a 4th scenario, which is also on the board's website for tonight. It's on the agenda items for tonight, and it's harsh. It's bare bones. It involves cuts that we think need to occur to balance out the ads. And so I just want to read a little statement that you would see if you read the article that's going to come out in the North Avenue News this week. Toward the end, the board's job is to balance resources and needs so that all children find challenge and choice, as well as support for their pursuit of excellence in our schools. The board is committed to providing students with the best programs possible at a reasonable and responsible cost. So there comes the problem, because we want to provide the best solution to the needs that we have, but the cost, the funding is not unlimited. So that becomes the discussion at tonight's board meeting and subsequent board meetings this month. There are 2 more scheduled, one for next Tuesday and one for the Tuesday after that. And they'll be live. You can listen
Actually,
to
it's
them.
not. It's the Thursday after that.
That's right. That's right.
It's next Tuesday, and then the following Thursday.
Okay.
I think it's the 23rd.
Because we're working on a deadline and by the end of January to have passed a budget for fiscal year 21. So basically, that's what's been happening in terms of budget update. It's an exciting process. It's always interesting to work with my 12 colleagues. From my perspective, it's always very interesting. We don't always agree, but we have we have the best wishes for the Burlington School District as possible in our hearts and in our heads at all times. So we have 5 minutes left, Keith.
Okay.
So
Well, I just wanted to say that the budget that was the alternative budget that's being proposed is $796,000 of programs that directly impact students, with a reduction in the current programs of the same amount of money. The thinking of the board members that met was that the baseline budget is projected to be, if we continue with this baseline budget to be an 8% increase. So it didn't seem like we could add to that. We needed to make sure that we got programs in that budget that were what needs of students, and we needed to figure out ways that we could match that with reductions in other areas. So that's what's being proposed tonight, and I'm sure it'll be highly discussed. The one thing I want to talk about is the BHS project. On the third, I think it's the 16th, is our next meeting at BHS cafeteria, 5:30 to 7, to give an update on how the project is going. I can give you a sort of initial or preliminary. We're meeting tomorrow to as a sort of a work group to go over what the design is at the current process. We're waiting for an estimate of the current design, and that has been promised to us by the construction management firm of Whiting, Turner, Negley Chase on the 15th of January. So on the 16th, when we report out what we've been doing, that report will probably be more of a generalized report, because we will not really have had to have a chance to really dig deep into the numbers and the estimate. The other thing I thought we should report on.
We got to stop.
We got to stop.
We have to stop.
Oh.
So I just want to. We have 3 minutes left. I just want to mention that, you know, one of the best ways that you can communicate with us is to attend these meetings that Keith was just talking about. Tomorrow night there's a curriculum and personnel meeting. We have equity and inclusion committees meeting. They're all posted on the Burlington website. It's a nice chance for community members to get together in a casual format and talk to board members about issues of concern and receive information about what's going on. There's so much more going on that we you know, there are lots of things that we'd like to talk about tonight, but we thought we would talk about the superintendent search, the budget procedure that we're in right now, the BHS
construction
project was very important, and I just want to thank you very much for watching, and appreciate your support. Things are happening in Burlington as they always are, and it's certainly an honor and a privilege to work with young people and to work with the people in our district who provide the educational excellence that we see every day if we will go into the schools and observe it. So thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.